If you've been following the NBA closely, there's no way you haven't heard of former Warriors coach Mark Jackson, who is also a former starting point guard and current ESPN analyst. But very few people know that Mark has a much younger, but certainly not smaller brother that goes by the name of Troy Escalade Jackson. Unlike his brother Mark, Troy never made it to the professional level in basketball, but he still managed to become a basketball legend and was at one point even more popular than seasoned NBA players, becoming a huge attraction for fans, largely thanks to his enormous size at 6'10", 500 pounds, which made him one of the most unique ballers out there. Today we'll be taking a closer look at Troy's fascinating basketball journey, going from overweight street baller to basketball legend. But first, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Always being a huge fan of the NBA, it seemed that Troy was destined to go to the league himself, considering his size and skill. Ever since the age of 10, he followed the NBA religiously and would spend each night playing ball on the local playgrounds in Queens and Harlem. It was right around this time that his older brother Mark was solidifying himself as a huge basketball prospect. And in 1987, when Troy was just 14 years old, Mark got selected as the 18th pick of the NBA draft. Having a brother in the NBA will certainly change someone's life, and for Troy, that meant plenty of visits to the local McDonald's. Troy loved eating Big Macs and would order many of them each and every day. With his brother making it to the league, Troy was pretty much set for life and had little motivation to pursue anything serious when it comes to basketball or anything else that drew even a small interest from him in the past. Instead, Troy simply wanted to put on a show at Rucker Park, with little regard when it came to his weight. Over his final 4 years of high school, Troy hit his peak weight of 500 pounds. Adding to his height of 6'10" made Troy a man amongst boys in high school, and despite being 250 pounds overweight, drew attention from scouts who came to watch him play at Rucker Park. But it wasn't all about size either. Troy was a very capable ball handler and passer and would often act as the team's point guard, bullying his way to the rim or finding teammates with a flashy pass. So when time for college came rolling around, while he didn't have any offers from major schools, Troy had an offer from Wallace Community College in Selma, Alabama, which is something he could not refuse, because frankly, he had no other option. It's not like he could go out and find any regular job being 6'10" and 500 pounds. Troy might have been too big of a fan of McDonald's, but when it came down to playing ball, there were very few that were better than him on the court. He impressed during his time at Wallace Community College, and while this certainly wasn't the highest level of college basketball, Jackson's disregard for anyone who was guarding him put him on the map of several Division I schools. And after receiving an all-region honors as a sophomore, he was offered another full-ride scholarship, this time to the University of Louisville, one of the most respected basketball programs in the nation, and coached by one of the most respected college basketball coaches ever, Danny Crum. Troy's scholarship didn't come without some conditions though, and obviously it had to do with his weight. Troy was asked to replace the Big Macs with a salad and drop well below the 400-pound mark, a weight that he hasn't seen since his early high school days. This, along with the fact that basketball at Louisville is a lot more structured than someone like Troy is used to, who is used to toying with defenders on the neighborhood playgrounds, made him struggle at the Division I basketball level, and only averaged a measly 3 points, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist per game, playing just 20 games over a period of 2 years. The only thing that Escalade gained from his time there was a bachelor's degree in communications. Hey, it's better than nothing, right? For Troy, it probably wasn't, as being called up by some of the best basketball programs in the nation only to warm the bench for 2 seasons was certainly very disappointing for the big fella. And Troy returned to the one thing that's never disappointed him in life: Big Macs. After losing all that weight in college, it didn't take long for Troy to gain it all back and reach 500 pounds once again for the second time in his life. Back in his hometown of Harlem, Troy would go to his childhood McDonald's every day and become, well, somewhat depressed. To get his mind off his failed college basketball career, Troy briefly found himself a spot playing for the Harlem Globetrotters. And while he was busy entertaining the crowd at Globetrotter games and in Rucker Park, he had no idea that his next big opportunity was just around the corner. And it literally was just around the corner, and it was a new sports gear company located just a few blocks down, called And One. Being new on the market, the company was looking for any new way they could to market themselves and make a name in an already crowded sports gear market. It was at this time that a basketball mixtape found its way to their desk, showcasing the skills of some of the playground legends. And one immediately saw the potential in this, and they became known across New York not for their apparel, but their street ball tapes. The strategy was an immediate success, and people were lining up in front of the store and giving out a street ball mixtape volume 1 for every $100 spent at the store. Realizing that they struck gold, and one soon announced a nationwide tour promoting the brand. They also established teams with full rosters, like any professional league would, and they hit their peak when they scored airtime on ESPN during the early 2000s. But this was right around the time that Escalade Jackson jumped on the scene, and he became one of &1's biggest stars, becoming a fan favorite with each tour. Troy was playing with famous basketball YouTuber The Professor, who was still trying to make a name for himself at the time. Jackson's popularity helped the brand expand from New York to Miami, then Philly, DC, and eventually the entire country. And just like that, &1 took the nation by storm, largely thanks to their 500-pound ball-handling star. Thousands would show up to games eager to see Jackson and the Professor toy with defenders on their way to the basket. In 2005, when the brand popularity was at its peak, Troy and the Professor even made the cover of Sports Illustrated, a feat that was thought impossible by non-NBA established players. As the years went on, thanks to his skill, personality, and image he created, Escalade became one of basketball's biggest stars and drew enormous attention everywhere he went. Despite playing in a discount league, Troy at one time was even more popular than established NBA players and could walk into any club in the country and get VIP treatment. With all the success, though, weight became much less of a concern for Troy, and his years of eating away at McDonald's finally came to haunt him. It was the Professor who first noticed that Troy began to have a hard time keeping up with the season, and his weight was no longer helping him, it was becoming a risk for his health. Failing to reason with him alone, the Professor, or Grayson Boucher, turned to Troy's brother Mark for help. Mark, though, has learned to accept the fact that Troy is always going to be that big kid he grew up with, and the two decided to let him be who he was going to be without interfering. And why would Troy want to lose the weight? His weight was the main reason he became popular after all. There are plenty of 6'10" ball players out there, but very few of them are 500 pounds and have the dribbling skills that Troy had. Troy had already felt the effects his weight has had on his body, but decided to keep up his bad habits, and after years of abuse, his body finally reached the breaking point. In 2011, when Troy was promoting his upcoming street ball tour, he suffered a stroke in his sleep and died at the age of 38. His death came as a huge shock for the basketball fans across the world, but considering that Troy suffered from hypertensive heart disease, it was only a matter of time before his eating habits would come full circle. In the end, despite never making it as a pro, Troy would forever be remembered as a lovable giant who loved to entertain. What do you think of Escalade's fascinating story? Do you think he could have been successful in the NBA? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section, and as always, leave us a like on the video and subscribe to the channel.